Welcome to Fated Hearts, your destination for captivating paranormal romance audiobooks that will sweep you off your feet and into worlds where love knows no boundaries. Today, we present The Alpha's Rejected Maid, a tale of hidden power, royal bloodlines, and a love that defies every rule. Chapter 1, Same Routine, Different Day. Sage pushed open Knox's bedroom door at exactly 6 a.m. She'd been doing this for 3 years now, and the routine never changed. Knox was already awake, standing by the window in his sleep pants. His hair stuck up in about 5 different directions. Sage had to bite back a smile. The big bad Alpha King looked like he'd been wrestling with his pillow all night. "Morning," she said, setting his coffee tray down on the table. Knox turned around, and something weird happened. Their eyes met, and Sage felt like she'd been hit by lightning. Her wolf, who usually stayed quiet and hidden, suddenly perked up like a dog hearing a treat bag. Knox's eyes went wide. He stared at her for way too long, and Sage started to fidget. I brought your coffee," she said. "And those blueberry things you like." "Right. Coffee." Knox's voice sounded rough, like he'd forgotten how to talk. Sage busied herself arranging his breakfast, trying to ignore the way he was still staring at her. This was new. Knox barely looked at her most days. She was just the maid who brought his coffee and tried not to break anything expensive. But today felt different. Today, the air in the room felt thick, like right before a thunderstorm. "Sage," Knox said suddenly. She looked up.
"Yeah."
He opened his mouth, then closed it. Shook his head. "Nothing. Thanks for breakfast." Sage nodded and headed for the door, but she could feel his eyes on her back the whole way. Once she was safely in the hallway, she leaned against the wall and tried to figure out what the hell just happened. Her wolf was still acting weird, pacing around in her head like it wanted something. But that was impossible. Sage was nobody special. Just a maid who'd gotten lucky enough to work in the palace instead of scrubbing floors in some tavern. Chapter 2, Bad News. Knox stared at the door after Sage left. His wolf was going crazy, practically howling in his head. "Mate. Mate. Mate." "Shut up," Knox muttered. He walked over to his desk and picked up the letter that had ruined his entire week. The fancy paper with the council's official seal. The letter that basically said his life wasn't his own anymore. Knox read it again, even though he'd memorized every word. "The council has decided you need to get married. Like, now. We picked Vivian Cross for you. Her dad's Alpha Blake Cross from up north. You're getting engaged next week whether you like it or not. This will stop the war everyone's been worried about. You're welcome." Okay, so the actual letter was more formal than that. But that's what it meant. Knox crumpled up the paper and threw it across the room. His wolf snarled. "Wrong female. Want our mate. She smells like home." "She's a maid," Knox said out loud. "She has no pack rank. No political connections. The council would laugh me out of the room." But even as he said it, Knox knew that wasn't the real problem. The real problem was that he was a coward. He'd been Alpha King since he was 20. His parents died in a rogue attack, and suddenly Knox went from being a normal pack member to running the whole show. 8 years of putting everyone else first. 8 years of doing what was expected instead of what he wanted. And what he wanted was standing in his room every morning, smiling at him like he was worth something more than just his title. Someone knocked on his door. "Come in," Knox called. Reed walked in, took one look at Knox's face and the crumpled letter on the floor, and sighed. "Let me guess. The council made their choice. Vivian Cross. 1 week until the engagement party." Reed was quiet for a minute. Then he said, "You know you could just tell them no, right?" "No, I can't. Knox, she's your mate. I can smell it on both of you. This arranged marriage thing is going to kill you. Knox turned away. The pack needs this alliance. Blake Cross has been making threats for months. This marriage stops a war. What about what you need? Reed asked. Knox laughed, but it wasn't funny. I'm the Alpha King. Reed. I don't get to need things. I get to do my job. Chapter 3, When Everything Goes Wrong. That evening, Sage was cleaning Knox's study when it happened. She was dusting the bookshelf, trying not to think about the weird moment they'd had that morning, when she knocked over a glass paperweight. It hit the floor and shattered into about 1,000,000 pieces. Crap, Sage muttered, dropping to her knees to pick up the glass. She was being careful, but one of the bigger pieces sliced right across her palm. Blood welled up immediately. Sage hissed and pressed her other hand against the cut, but blood kept seeping between her fingers. The study door slammed open so hard it hit the wall. Knox stood in the doorway, his eyes wild. His nostrils flared like he was scenting the air, and when his gaze landed on her bleeding hand, something in his face just snapped. You're hurt, he said, and his voice was different. Deeper. More growl than words. Before Sage could say anything, Knox was across the room and kneeling beside her. He took her injured hand in both of his, and the moment their skin touched, that lightning feeling from this morning came back 10 times stronger. Sage's wolf went absolutely nuts. It was like someone had just told her she'd won the lottery and found her favorite food and discovered the meaning of life all at the same time. Knox's hands were gentle as he examined the cut. It's deep, he said. You need stitches. It's fine, Sage started to say, but Knox was already tearing a strip of cloth from his shirt to wrap around her hand. His fingers brushed against her wrist as he tied the makeshift bandage, and Sage forgot how to breathe. Knox looked up at her, and their faces were maybe 6 inches apart. For a second, Sage thought he was going to kiss her. His eyes dropped to her lips, and she could feel his breath on her face. Then the door burst open again. Knox, we need to. Reed stopped mid-sentence when he saw them kneeling on the floor together, Knox holding Sage's bandaged hand like it was made of glass. Reed's eyes went wide. Oh. Sorry. I can come back later. Knox dropped Sage's hand like it had burned him and stood up fast. No, it's fine. Sage was there was an accident. Sage scrambled to her feet, her face burning with embarrassment. I should go. Get this properly cleaned up. She practically ran out of the room, leaving Knox and Reed staring after her. Chapter 4, The Revelation. Knox watched Sage disappear down the hallway, and his wolf was having a complete meltdown. Go after her. Protect her. She's bleeding. She needs us. Knox, Reed said carefully. We need to talk. Knox dragged his hands through his hair. I know what you're going to say. Do you? Because what I'm going to say is that the council just moved up your engagement ceremony. It's happening tomorrow night. Knox felt like someone had punched him in the gut. What? Blake Cross is arriving tonight with his daughter. Apparently, there were some new threats from the Eastern Pacts, and the council wants this alliance locked down immediately. Knox sank into his desk chair. Tomorrow night. He had less than 24 hours before he was officially engaged to a woman he didn't love. A woman who wasn't his mate. There's something else, Reed said quietly. What now? I did some digging into Sage's background after what happened today. Knox, there's something you need to know about her. Knox looked up. What kind of something? Reed pulled out a folder and set it on the desk. Her last name is Holloway. So? The Holloway pack was wiped out 20 years ago. Every single member killed in what everyone assumed was a rogue attack. Knox frowned. Everyone knows that story. What does it have to do with Sage? What if it wasn't rogues? Reed asked. What if someone wanted the Holloway bloodline eliminated? And what if they didn't get everyone? Knox opened the folder. Inside were old newspaper clippings, pack records, and a birth certificate. Sage Holloway, born 22 years ago to Alpha Thomas Holloway and Luna Catherine Holloway. She's not just some random maid, Reed said. She's the daughter of an Alpha. The last surviving member of one of the most powerful bloodlines in wolf shifter history. Knox stared at the papers, his mind reeling. Does she know? I don't think so. Look at this. Reed pointed to another document. May Carter, listed as Sage's guardian. She was Catherine Holloway's sister, married into the pack before the massacre. So May's been hiding her. For good reason. The Holloway pack wasn't just powerful, Knox, they were legendary. Alphas who could command multiple packs. Healers who could bring people back from the brink of death. If someone wanted them dead 20 years ago, they'd definitely want Sage dead now. Knox felt sick. All this time, Sage had been living in his palace, cleaning his rooms, bringing him coffee. And he'd never known she was royalty. That she was in danger, just by being alive. There's more, Reed said. The council knows. Knox's head snapped up. What? They've known who she is this whole time. That's why they're pushing so hard for this marriage with Vivian Cross. They want you tied up in a political alliance before you figure out that your mate is actually more powerful than half the alphas on the council. Knox stood up so fast his chair fell over. They've been lying to me. For 3 years. And, Knox, if they're willing to lie about this, what else are they hiding? Knox looked at the door. Sage had disappeared through. His mate. His powerful royal endangered mate. Who had no idea who she really was. And tomorrow night, he was supposed to get engaged to someone else. I have to tell her, Knox said. Tell her what? That she's the lost princess of a murdered bloodline? That there are probably people who still want her dead? That you're her mate, but you're getting engaged to someone else tomorrow? Knox winced. When Reed put it like that, it sounded pretty bad. I have to do something. What you have to do, Reed said, is be very careful. If the council finds out that you know the truth about Sage, they might decide she's too dangerous to keep around. Knox's wolf snarled at the thought of anyone threatening Sage. They wouldn't dare. Wouldn't they? They covered up a massacre. Knox, they've been lying to you for years. What makes you think they'd hesitate to eliminate one inconvenient maid? Knox sank back into his chair. Reed was right. The council had already proven they'd do anything to maintain their power. And, Sage, with her royal bloodline and her connection to Knox, was a threat to everything they'd built. So what should I do? Knox asked. Reed was silent for a bit, then said, I don't know. But, whatever you choose, you need to decide quickly. Because tomorrow night, you will either be engaged to Vivian Cross, or you will be starting a war. Chapter 5, The Real Truth. Sage was in her tiny room above the kitchens when May knocked on her door. We need to talk. May said, closing the door behind her. About what? Sage asked. May sat down on the edge of Sage's narrow bed. About why you never shifted. Sage blinked. What do you mean? I'm just a late bloomer. Some wolves don't shift until their 20s. Sage, you're 22. And you're not a late bloomer. Then what's wrong with me? May took a deep breath. There's nothing wrong with you. Your wolf is there, but she's been hiding, protecting you from a memory that was too terrible to process. What memory? The night your parents died. You were there, Sage, you saw everything. Sage felt cold, suddenly. My parents died in a car accident when I was 2. You told me. I lied. May said quietly. Your parents were Alpha Thomas Holloway and Luna Catherine Holloway. And you watched them die. The room seemed to spin. That's impossible. You were 2 years old when the attack happened. Old enough to understand that something terrible was happening, but too young to process it. Your wolf retreated so deep inside you that she's been dormant ever since. But I would remember. Your mind blocked it out. It's called dissociative amnesia. Humans get it too when they experienced severe trauma as children. Sage stared at her. You're saying I'm the missing Holloway heir? The only surviving member of the most powerful bloodline in werewolf history. And your wolf has been protecting you by staying hidden, because on some level, you know that being discovered means being in danger. So why are you telling me now? May looked worried. Because of what happened with the Alpha King today. The mate bond is forcing your wolf to surface whether she wants to or not. You're going to start shifting soon, and when you do, everyone's going to know what you are. What I am. Not just an alpha, Sage, something more. The Holloway bloodline doesn't just produce alphas. It produces leaders who can unite entire regions. Your father could have been High King if he'd wanted it. Sage felt something stirring inside her chest. Not power being unleashed, but something that had always been there, finally waking up. The people who killed my parents, she said slowly. Are they still alive? May nodded reluctantly. Some of them are on the council. Chapter 6, The Engagement Party from Hell. The next evening. Knox stood in the grand ballroom. He was supposed to wear a formal dress uniform, but he didn't. He could not be bothered, and he was just trying not to throw up. The engagement party was in full swing. Alphas from all over the region had come to witness his political sacrifice. The room was full of expensive suits, fancy dresses, and fake smiles. Vivian Cross stood beside him in a white gown that probably cost more than most people made in a year. She was beautiful, Knox had to admit. Blonde hair, blue eyes, perfect posture, everything a future queen should be. She was also about as interesting as watching paint dry. You seem distracted, Vivian said quietly. Knox forced a smile. Just thinking about the future. Our future, she corrected, and something in her tone made Knox look at her more carefully. Vivian's smile was perfect, but her eyes were cold. Calculating. Like she was already planning how to redecorate his palace. Ladies and gentlemen, Alpha Blake Cross called out, raising his champagne glass. Tonight, we celebrate the union of two great bloodlines. My daughter, Vivian, and Alpha King Knox will bring peace and prosperity to our territories. Everyone applauded. Knox felt like he was watching his own funeral. That's when he saw her. Sage stood in the doorway of the ballroom, but she looked completely different. Her usual simple maid's dress was gone, replaced by a deep green gown that made her eyes look like emeralds. Her dark hair was loose around her shoulders, instead of pulled back in its usual bun. But it wasn't just her appearance that had changed. There was something else. Something that made every wolf in the room turn and stare. Power. Raw, undeniable power that rolled off her in waves. Knox's wolf went crazy. Mate. Our mate. She's here. Sage walked into the ballroom like she owned it. Conversation stopped. People stepped aside to let her pass. Even the alphas in the room seemed to recognize that something had shifted. She walked straight up to Knox and Vivian, ignoring the shocked whispers that followed her. Sorry I'm late, Sage said, and her voice carried across the suddenly quiet room. I had some things to figure out. Blake Cross stepped forward, his face red with anger. What is the meaning of this? Who let a servant into the engagement party? Sage turned to look at him, and Blake actually took a step back. I am not a servant. Sage said calmly. I am Sage Holloway. daughter of Alpha Thomas Holloway and Luna Catherine Holloway, the last surviving member of the Holloway bloodline. The room erupted in shocked murmurs. Knox heard someone drop their champagne glass. "That's impossible," one of the council members said. "The Holloway pack was destroyed 20 years ago." "Most of it was," Sage agreed. "But not all of it." She looked directly at Knox, and he could see the hurt in her eyes, the betrayal. "Did you know?" she asked quietly. Knox wanted to lie, wanted to protect her from the truth, but he couldn't. "I found out yesterday," he said. Sage nodded, like that's what she'd expected. "And you were going to get engaged anyway." "Sage, I can explain, no need," she said. "I understand perfectly. Duty before everything else, right? Even before your mate." The word mate sent another wave of shocked whispers through the crowd. Vivian's perfect composure finally cracked. "Excuse me? Did she just say mate?" Knox looked at Vivian, then at Sage, then at the room full of alphas, who were all staring at him like he'd grown a second head. "Yes," he said finally. "She did." And then, all hell broke loose. Chapter 7, All Hell Breaks Loose. The ballroom erupted into chaos. Half the alphas started shouting at once. Someone threw their champagne glass. Blake Cross looked like he was about to have a heart attack. "This is preposterous," one of the council members yelled. "The Holloway bloodline is extinct." "Clearly not," Sage said calmly, and her voice somehow carried over all the noise. Knox watched her stand there in the middle of the storm she'd created, completely unruffled. This wasn't the nervous maid who'd brought him coffee that morning, this was someone else entirely. Vivian stepped forward, her perfect composure finally cracking. "I don't know what kind of game you're playing, but—" "No game," Sage interrupted. "Just the truth." "Prove it," Blake Cross demanded. "Anyone can claim to be a Holloway." Sage smiled, and it wasn't a nice smile. "Okay." She closed her eyes for a moment, and Knox felt something shift in the air. Like the moment before lightning strikes. When Sage opened her eyes again, they were glowing. Not metaphorically glowing, actually glowing with a soft golden light. Every wolf in the room felt it. The power that rolled off her in waves. Ancient power. Royal power. The kind that made lesser wolves want to bare their throats in submission. Knox's wolf whimpered and tried to bow, even though Knox was an Alpha King himself. "Holy shit," someone whispered. Blake Cross took several steps back. That's impossible." "The Holloway bloodline carries the light of the first wolves," Sage said, and her voice had changed too, deeper, more commanding. "We are the children of the moon herself. And I am the last." The golden light faded from her eyes, and she was just Sage again. But everyone in the room was staring at her like she'd grown wings. "So," she said conversationally, "about this engagement." Knox found his voice. "Sage, we need to talk. Privately." "I think we're past private conversations," she said. "You made your choice in front of everyone. I'm just making mine." "What choice?" Knox asked, though he was pretty sure he didn't want to know. Sage looked around the room at all the shocked faces. "I'm invoking the right of challenge." The room went dead silent. The right of challenge was an ancient law that hadn't been used in over a century. It allowed any unmated alpha to challenge an engagement if they could prove a stronger claim. "You can't," Vivian said, her voice shaking. "You're not an alpha." Sage raised an eyebrow. "Want to bet?" Chapter 8, The Challenge. Knox felt like his world was falling apart. "Sage, you don't understand what you're doing," he said desperately. "The right of challenge means—" "I know what it means," she said. 3 trials, strength, wisdom, and sacrifice. Winner gets to marry the Alpha King. This is insane, Blake Cross sputtered. She's a servant. She's the daughter of an alpha. Knox said quietly. Which gives her the right to challenge. He looked at the council members, who were all whispering frantically to each other. They looked terrified. And Knox was starting to understand why. If Sage really was the last Holloway, she wasn't just some random alpha's daughter. The Holloway bloodline had been legendary. They'd produced the most powerful wolves in history. And if the council had known she was alive all this time. The challenge is accepted. Elder Morrison announced reluctantly. The trials will take place tomorrow at dawn. No, Knox said. I won't let you do this. Sage turned to look at him, and the hurt in her eyes made his chest ache. You don't get to decide what I do anymore. You made it clear where your priorities are. Sage, please. Let me explain. Explain what? That duty comes before everything else? That I'm good enough to be your mate but not good enough to be your queen? I got the message loud and clear. Knox wanted to tell her that wasn't it at all. That he'd been trying to protect her. That he'd been scared of what the council might do if they knew the truth. But looking at her now, standing there like a queen already, Knox realized how stupid he'd been. Sage didn't need his protection, she never had. The trials begin at dawn. Sage announced. May the best woman win. She turned and walked out of the ballroom, leaving behind a room full of stunned alphas and one very confused Alpha King. Reed appeared at Knox's elbow. Well, that could have gone better. You think? Knox said, sarcastically. Knox, there's something else you need to know. What now? Reed lowered his voice. I did some more digging after I found out about Sage's identity. The attack on the Holloway pack, 20 years ago? It wasn't random. Knox's blood went cold. What do you mean? I mean, someone ordered it. Someone who wanted the Holloway bloodline eliminated. Who? Reed glanced around the room at the council members, who were still arguing in hushed tones. I'm still working on that. But Knox, if someone was willing to massacre an entire pack to keep the Holloways from power, what do you think they'll do to stop Sage now? Knox followed Reed's gaze to where Elder Morrison was having an intense conversation with two other council members. Their faces were grim. They're planning something, Knox realized.
Yeah.
And I don't think it's going to be a fair fight. Knox looked toward the door where Sage had disappeared, his mate. His brave, powerful, stubborn mate who had just painted a target on her back. Then we better make sure she's ready for whatever they throw at her. We? Knox's wolf snarled at the thought of anyone threatening Sage. She might not want my help, but she's getting it anyway. I'm not losing her again. Even if it means going against the council? Knox thought about the lies they'd told him. The way they'd manipulated both him and Sage. The arranged marriage that was supposed to keep him from discovering the truth. Especially then, he said. Reed grinned. Now you're talking like an Alpha King instead of a politician. Knox looked around the ballroom one more time. At Vivian, who was crying angry tears. At Blake Cross, who looked like he wanted to strangle someone. At the council members, who were probably already planning Sage's downfall. Tomorrow, everything would change, one way or another. Come on, Knox said. We have work to do. Chapter 9, The First Trial. Dawn came way too early. Sage stood in the center of the training arena, wearing simple fighting clothes that May had somehow found for her. The entire pack had gathered to watch the trials, along with visiting alphas from neighboring territories. Word had spread fast about the Holloway heir challenging for the Alpha King. Knox stood with the council on the raised platform. Looking like he hadn't slept at all. Good. Sage hoped he'd been up all night thinking about his choices. Vivian Cross stood on the opposite side of the arena, dressed in expensive fighting gear that probably cost more than Sage made in a year. She looked confident. Prepared, like she'd been training for this her whole life. Which she probably had. The first trial is strength. Elder Morrison announced. Combat until one yields or cannot continue. Sage rolled her shoulders and tried to calm her nerves. Her wolf was awake now, pacing restlessly under her skin, but she'd never actually fought anyone before, unless you counted that time she'd punched a drunk pack member who'd grabbed her ass. You sure about this? Reed called out from the sidelines. Knox had sent him to check on her, which was both sweet and annoying. Too late to back out now, Sage said. Vivian stepped into the center of the arena. I want you to know. I don't take any pleasure in this. She said quietly. But I won't go easy on you, just because you're his mate. Sage blinked. You know? I'm not stupid. I could smell it on both of you last night. Vivian's smile was sharp. But being mates doesn't make you queen material. Guess we'll find out. Elder Morrison raised his hand. Begin. Vivian moved fast. Faster than Sage expected. She came in low, going for Sage's legs, trying to take her down quick. But Sage's wolf had other ideas. Time seemed to slow down. Sage could see exactly where Vivian was going to strike, could feel her own body moving to counter before her brain even caught up. She sidestepped Vivian's attack and grabbed her wrist, using her momentum to flip her over her shoulder. Vivian hit the ground hard, but rolled back to her feet immediately. Lucky shot. Was it? Sage asked, and she could hear something different in her own voice. Something that made Vivian's eyes narrow. They circled each other like predators. Vivian was clearly trained, her movements precise and calculated. But Sage had something else. Something that felt like instinct, but stronger. Her wolf was teaching her as they fought. Vivian came at her again, this time with a series of quick punches aimed at Sage's ribs. Sage blocked most of them. But a few got through. Pain flared across her side, but instead of slowing her down, it seemed to wake something up. Power flooded through Sage's muscles. Not magic, just pure physical strength that she'd never felt before. When Vivian threw her next punch, Sage caught her fist in her palm and squeezed. Vivian's eyes went wide as Sage's grip tightened around her hand. Impossible, she whispered. The Holloway bloodline doesn't just carry royal genes, Sage said conversationally, still holding Vivian's fist. We're also really, really strong. She released Vivian's hand and stepped back. Vivian flexed her fingers, wincing. Yield, Sage said simply. Vivian looked at her crushed hand. Then at Sage. Then at the crowd of shocked faces surrounding them. I yield. The arena erupted in cheers and shocked murmurs. Sage looked up at the platform where Knox was staring at her with something that might have been pride. Or terror. It was hard to tell. Chapter 10, The Second Trial. The second trial was held in the Pax Council chamber. Wisdom. Elder Morrison had said. They would each be presented with a scenario and asked to provide a solution. Sage sat at a long wooden table across from Vivian, who was nursing her bruised hand and looking significantly less confident than she had that morning. The scenario. Elder Morrison began, is this. Two packs are on the verge of war over territory disputes. Negotiations have failed, both sides have valid claims. As Luna, how would you resolve this conflict? Vivian went first. Her answer was textbook perfect, mediation, compromise, splitting the disputed territory down the middle. It was diplomatic and fair, and completely boring. When it was Sage's turn, she stood up. I wouldn't split the territory, she said. The council members looked surprised. Then what would you do? Elder Morrison asked. I'd find out why they really want it. Explain. Sage walked around the table, her mind working. Territory disputes are never really about territory. They're about resources, safety, pride, fear. You don't solve the problem by cutting the land in half. You solve it by addressing the real issue. She stopped in front of the council. So, I'd ask questions. Does one pack need the territory for hunting grounds, because their current land can't support their population? Does the other pack need it for security? Because they're being threatened by rogues? Are they fighting over a water source? A sacred site? Elder Morrison leaned forward. And then? Then I'd find a solution that gives both packs what they actually need, not just what they think they want. Maybe Pack A gets hunting rights, but Pack B gets to build their security outposts there. Maybe they share the water source, but take turns using the sacred site. Maybe they form an alliance and defend the territory together? The room was quiet for a long moment. The point. Sage continued. Is that a good Luna doesn't just keep the peace, she builds bridges. She finds ways for everyone to win, not just ways for everyone to shut up and accept half of what they wanted. Elder Morrison nodded slowly. Interesting approach. Vivian's answer had been correct. But Sage's answer had been smart. The second trial goes to Sage Holloway. Elder Morrison announced. Knox was staring at her again, and this time, Sage was pretty sure it was pride on his face. Which was annoying, because she was still mad at him. The final trial will take place at sunset, Elder Morrison said. The trial of sacrifice. As the crowd dispersed, Reed appeared at Sage's elbow. Nice job in there. Thanks. What's the trial of sacrifice? Reed's expression grew serious. Each of you has to give up something important. To prove your commitment to the role of Luna. Usually, it's symbolic, a family heirloom, a title, something like that. Usually? But, given the circumstances, I have a feeling they're going to ask for something bigger. Sage looked toward where the council members were huddled in intense conversation. Elder Morrison kept glancing in her direction, and his expression wasn't friendly. They're planning something, she realized.
Yeah.
And I don't think it's going to be fair. Sage thought about the power she'd felt during the first trial. The way her wolf had guided her movements, taught her how to fight. The strength that had let her crush Vivian's hand without even trying. Then I guess I better be ready for anything. Reed studied her face. You know. When this started, I thought you were just a brave maid with a death wish. But you're not, are you? What do you mean? You're not just the lost Holloway princess. You're exactly what this pack needs. What Knox needs. Sage felt something warm unfurl in her chest at his words. Too bad. He figured that out too late. Did he? Reed asked. Because, from where I'm standing, it looks like he's finally ready to fight for what he wants, instead of what he thinks he should want. Sage looked across the room to where Knox was arguing with the council members. His voice was raised, and he looked angry. Really angry. What's he doing? Probably, trying to make sure the final trial doesn't get you killed. Reed said grimly. As if he'd heard them talking, Knox looked over and caught Sage's eye. The expression on his face made her stomach flip. He looked like a man who'd finally decided to stop playing by other people's rules. This should be interesting. Reed muttered. Chapter 11, The Trial of Sacrifice. Sunset painted the sky blood red, as everyone gathered in the main courtyard for the final trial. Sage could feel the tension in the air, like electricity before a storm. Elder Morrison stood on the platform, with a scroll in his hands, and a smile that made Sage's skin crawl. The trial of sacrifice, he announced. requires each candidate to prove their commitment to the role of Luna by giving up what they value most. Knox stepped forward from where he'd been standing with the other alphas. What exactly are you asking them to sacrifice? For Vivian Cross, Elder Morrison said, we ask that she renounce her claim to her father's pack. She must choose between being Luna here, or being heir to the Northern Territories. Vivian went pale, but nodded. I accept. And for Sage Holloway, Elder Morrison's smile got wider, we ask that she renounce her claim to the Holloway bloodline. She must choose between being Luna and being the last of her family line. The courtyard went dead silent. Sage felt like she'd been slapped. You want me to give up my identity? The Holloway bloodline represents a threat to pack stability, Elder Morrison said smoothly. Too much power concentrated in one person. If you truly wish to serve this pack as Luna, you must prove that you value the role more than your own legacy. That's not a sacrifice, Knox said, his voice dangerous. That's asking her to erase herself. The trial stands. Elder Morrison said firmly. Sage looked around the courtyard. Some faces looked sympathetic, others looked curious to see what she'd do. A few looked like they agreed with the council. And if I refuse, she asked. Then you forfeit the challenge, and Vivian Cross becomes Luna. Sage felt her wolf snarling in her mind. This wasn't about sacrifice, this was about eliminating the threat she represented. They wanted her to voluntarily give up the one thing that made her dangerous to them. I need a moment to think, she said. You have until the moon rises, Elder Morrison said. Choose wisely. As the crowd began to disperse, Knox jumped down from the platform and strode over to her. Don't do it, he said immediately. Excuse me? Don't give up your bloodline. It's not worth it. Sage stared at him. Not worth it? I thought you wanted to marry me. I do. But not like this. Not if it means you have to destroy who you are. So, what are you saying? Knox ran his hands through his hair, looking frustrated. I'm saying I was an idiot. I'm saying I should have chosen you from the beginning. I'm saying that if the only way to be with you is to ask you to give up everything that makes you who you are, then maybe I don't deserve you. Sage felt something crack in her chest. Knox. I love you, he said desperately. I love your strength, and your stubbornness, and the way you make me want to be better than I am. I love that you're the lost princess of the most powerful bloodline in wolf shifter history. I don't want you to be less than what you are. I want to be worthy of what you are. You're an idiot, Sage said softly. I know. A complete moron. I know that too. And you're about 3 trials too late with this speech. Knox's face fell. I know. Sage looked at him for a long moment. Then she reached up and grabbed his face in both hands. Lucky for you, she said, I'm an idiot too. And she kissed him. Chapter 12, The Queen's Choice. When Sage pulled away from the kiss, Knox looked dazed. Does this mean you forgive me? He asked. It means I'm still deciding, Sage said. But first, I have a trial to finish. The moon was rising as everyone gathered again. Sage stood in the center of the courtyard, feeling calmer than she had all day. Have you made your decision? Elder Morrison asked. I have, Sage said. But first, I have a question. This is not the time for questions. Who ordered the attack on the Holloway pack 20 years ago? The question hit the courtyard like a bomb. Elder Morrison's face went white. That's not relevant to. It's completely relevant. Sage said, her voice carrying across the silent crowd. Because the trial of sacrifice is supposed to test my commitment to this pack. But how can I commit to a pack whose leaders murdered my family? You have no proof. Actually, I do. Reed stepped out of the crowd, carrying a thick folder. Funny thing about old records. Sometimes they turn up in the most interesting places. He handed the folder to Sage, who opened it and pulled out a document. This is a council meeting transcript from 21 years ago, she announced. Quote, the Holloway bloodline has grown too powerful. Alpha Thomas refuses to acknowledge council authority. We must act before he unites the other packs against us. End quote. The crowd erupted in shocked murmurs. Elder Morrison looked like he was about to have a heart attack. That document is classified. Was classified, Reed corrected. Amazing what you can find when you know where to look. Sage pulled out another paper. And this is the attack plan. Signed by 3 council members. Including you, Elder Morrison. This is preposterous. Is it? Knox stepped forward, and his voice was deadly quiet. Because it explains a lot. Why you've been so eager to get me married off to someone you could control. Why you've been lying to me about Sage's identity. Why you're so desperate to make her give up her bloodline. He looked around at the other council members. You're not protecting the pack, you're protecting yourselves. Elder Morrison straightened his shoulders. The Holloway bloodline was a threat to pack stability, the Holloway bloodline was a threat to your power. Sage interrupted. And you murdered children to protect it. The golden light was back in her eyes. And this time, it wasn't gentle. It was fierce. Angry. The light of a queen who'd finally learned the truth about her parents' death. So here's my decision about the trial of sacrifice, she said, her voice ringing across the courtyard. I sacrifice the council members who murdered my family. The power that rolled off her was overwhelming, ancient. Royal. The kind that made every wolf in the courtyard want to bow. I am Sage Holloway, she declared. Daughter of Alpha Thomas and Luna Catherine. Last of the Holloway bloodline. And I claim leadership of this pack by right of blood and strength. Elder Morrison tried to speak, but no sound came out. The other council members looked terrified. Anyone who objects, Sage said conversationally, is welcome to challenge me. No one moved. Knox stepped up beside her. I guess that makes you Alpha Queen now. Sage looked at him. And what does that make you? Hopefully, Knox said, your mate. Sage smiled, and the golden light in her eyes softened. I suppose I could use a consort. Consort? Well, you can't be Alpha King if I'm Alpha Queen. That would be confusing. Knox laughed, and the sound was full of relief and joy. I can live with consort. Good, Sage said. Because you're going to have to prove you deserve even that. She turned to face the crowd. The trials are over. I win. And as the pack erupted in cheers, Sage finally felt like she was exactly where she belonged. New beginnings. Sage woke up to sunlight streaming through the windows of what used to be Knox's bedroom and was now their bedroom. Knox was already awake, propped up on one elbow, watching her with that soft expression he got sometimes when he thought she wasn't looking. Morning. She said, stretching. Morning, Your Majesty. Sage rolled her eyes. I told you to stop calling me that. Sorry. Morning, Alpha Queen. Knox. Morning. My terrifyingly powerful mate, who could probably bench press a truck. Sage laughed and smacked him with a pillow. Just morning works fine. Knox grinned and leaned down to kiss her. Morning. Better. 6 months had changed everything. The corrupt council members were gone, some exiled, others in prison. New council members had been elected, including Reed, who turned out to be surprisingly good at politics when he wasn't being sarcastic. The pack was thriving under Sage's leadership. Turns out, having an Alpha Queen who actually cared about solving problems instead of just maintaining power made a huge difference. What's on the agenda today? Knox asked, getting out of bed and pulling on a shirt. Meeting with the Northern Territories about the trade agreement. Training session with the new recruits. Oh, and May wants to talk to us about something. Knox paused. Good something, or bad something? With May, it's hard to tell. They found May in the kitchen, which had become her unofficial office since Sage had promoted her from head housekeeper to pack advisor. May claimed she was too old to learn politics, but she had a way of cutting through bullshit that made her invaluable in negotiations. There you are, May said, looking up from a stack of papers. We need to talk. About what? Sage asked, stealing a piece of bacon from Knox's plate. May smiled. About the fact that you're pregnant. Sage choked on the bacon. Knox dropped his coffee mug. What? They said in unison. I can smell it, May said matter-of-factly. Have been able to for about a week now. Figured you'd notice eventually, but apparently you're both oblivious. Sage stared at her. I'm pregnant? Very. Knox looked like he was about to pass out. We're having a baby? That's generally how pregnancy works, May said dryly. Sage put her hand on her stomach, trying to process the information. A baby! She was going to have Knox's baby. Holy shit, she whispered. Language. May scolded automatically. Knox suddenly broke into the biggest grin Sage had ever seen. We're having a baby. He picked Sage up and spun her around the kitchen, both of them laughing. Put me down, you maniac. Sage said, but she was smiling too. Knox set her down gently, then immediately started fussing. Are you okay? Do you need to sit down? Should you be working so much? What about the training sessions? Knox. Maybe we should call a doctor. Do we have a good doctor? We need the best doctor. Knox. And we'll need to baby-proof the palace. Do you think the council room is safe for a baby? What if? Sage grabbed his face in both hands. Knox. Breathe. He took a deep breath. Right. Breathing. I can do that. It's going to be fine, Sage said. We're going to be fine. Knox nodded, then grinned again. We're having a baby.
Yeah.
We are. May cleared her throat. If you two are done being adorable, we have pack business to discuss. Right, Sage said, trying to focus. Pack business. I can do pack business while pregnant. Of course you can. Knox said. You can do anything. Damn right I can. As they settled down to go over the day's agenda, Sage felt a sense of contentment she'd never experienced before. 6 months ago, she'd been a maid who thought she was nobody special. Now, she was an alpha queen, mated to the man she loved, with a baby on the way and a pack that actually respected her. It wasn't the life she'd planned, it was better. Oh. May said casually, and Vivian Cross is getting married next month. Sage looked up. Really? To who? That alpha from the Eastern Territories. Apparently, they met at some political function, and it was love at first sight. Good for her. Sage said, and meant it. Vivian had handled her loss in the trials with grace. And she'd even helped with the transition when Sage took over leadership. She sent a wedding invitation. May added. And a note saying she's glad things worked out the way they did. Knox snorted. I bet she is. She dodged a bullet, not having to marry me. Hey, Sage protested. What? You're way better than me. She got the better deal. Sage smiled and leaned over to kiss him. You're not wrong. I love you too, Knox said dryly. as May launched into a detailed report about trade negotiations. Sage let herself enjoy the moment. The morning sun, Knox's hand in hers, the knowledge that their baby was growing inside her, and the certainty that, whatever challenges came next, they'd face them together. She'd started as the Alpha's rejected maid, she'd ended up as the Alpha Queen. Not bad for a day's work. We hope the Alpha's rejected maid transported you to a world where love conquers all obstacles. If you enjoyed this story of transformation and triumph, please show your support with a like and subscribe to Fated Hearts for more captivating paranormal romance audiobooks. Thanks for listening. Join us for more stories.